amazing Leslie, to whom we are all eternally effing grateful. Thank you. Never gonna forget you, Leslie. All right, let's continue and finish the introductory remarks to Foucault, and specifically the primary themes that we're going to find in Discipline and Punish, the book that made him famous, all right? And as we started on Tuesday, here's the key. Foucault is going to provide a postmodern and or nominalist critique of the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought. That's the project. And in doing that, he's just going to continue a tradition that started with Nietzsche, right? Nietzsche invented postmodernism in a way, right? And Nietzsche brought to bear a postmodern analysis, first of Christianity, and then, well, first of Greek Platonic moral philosophy, and by extension, New Testament Christianity. And so Foucault is in a kind of very, very rich postmodern tradition, and Foucault is going to apply a Nietzschean, postmodern or anomalous, you can use any one of those words, analysis to the Enlightenment, and especially the Enlightenment understood. And not just understood generally, but even understood by us, right, as the heirs of the Enlightenment, as a metaphysical project, right? And this is really important. I don't want to bore you with all of this, but it's really critical to the overall argument. So as we started on Tuesday, we've got to understand, not in a general way to be sure, but we have to understand what that means, right? So we know what it is that Foucault is interrogating, what Foucault is decentering, right? For what he's kind of pulling apart, right? And so that's where we started on Tuesday. And so we're gonna finish that, and then we're gonna introduce Foucault, we're gonna introduce disciplinary power, and we're gonna introduce what disciplinary power does, all right? So on Tuesday, we began this discussion, almost kind of academic in a weird way, but at the end of the day, very important for the final, very important for the class. We started this kind of academic discussion about what the hell is the Enlightenment, right? I keep saying Foucault's going to bring a postmodern critique of the Enlightenment. I say we are the heirs of the Enlightenment. California State University is a quintessential invention of the Enlightenment. The political science department is a quintessential invention of the Enlightenment. Political science majors who go on to be lawyers and social workers and policy analysts is a quintessential Enlightenment invention, right? CSUN turns the children of peasants into lawyers. That's its purpose. It's even on. I think it says that in Latin on the university crest. We turn the children of peasants into lawyers, right? And that's just my snarky way of saying CSUN exists. It exists. Its sole purpose is to educate the children of the working class in this great socio-intellectual political experiment to elevate consciously and in terms of aptitude and talent and capacity and productivity, right? The people who used to be feudal peasants and the children of feudal peasants into lawyers and to professors. My mom raised 2 kids on welfare, didn't have a college education. I'm the product of public school, lived in total poverty, Enlightenment public school, Enlightenment university, Enlightenment PhD, and here the fuck I am. Let's turn peasants into professors. Okay, right? And so we got to talk about what this is, right? And so we started to say, look, the Enlightenment for the purposes of our class at least, right? And I'm sure other people would kind of describe or define the Enlightenment differently. It's a kind of an open thing for definition and characterization. But for the purposes of our class, we can think of the Enlightenment as a paradigm, as a system of thought, as a system of thought, of a large, comprehensive system of thought, as a worldview. You can almost think of the Enlightenment as a kind of a worldview, kind of like Platonic political philosophy or like Christian theology. You can kind of think of the Enlightenment as a worldview. And for the purposes of this class, the Enlightenment system of thought, the Enlightenment paradigm, is kind of put together, it's comprised, is a good way of putting it, of these three main areas. The Enlightenment paradigm is comprised, is made up of, constituted by, comprised, made up of these three main areas, which while independent in some way, are kind of reinforcing each other. Hence the paradigm idea, the worldview idea. And so those three areas, there's a philosophical component of the Enlightenment, there's a normative, social and behavioral and medical scientific part of the Enlightenment, and there's a political part of the Enlightenment, okay? So we're talking about one, what the Enlightenment is as a paradigm, and especially a paradigm understood as a metaphysical system of thought, right? And we're identifying the three main areas, okay? Now on Tuesday, we spent most of the lecture on Tuesday identifying the first major element of the Enlightenment system of thought. And we could call that the philosophical element. Sometimes we call it modern liberal political philosophy. Enlightenment philosophy tends to be very generally what we also call liberal, big L, modern big L liberal political philosophy. And it's characterized by 4 or 5 core ideas, absolutely core, central, foundational ideas that you and I acknowledge, right? That you and I celebrate, and not only that you and I acknowledge and celebrate, but that you and I acknowledge, celebrate, and conceive as true, as objectively true, right? Hence the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought, right? And we said, look, as the heirs of the Enlightenment, as the heirs of again, very loose, the view from 63,000 feet, right? Being very general here, right? As the heirs of a modern liberal political philosophy, as the citizens of what's left of American liberal democracy, everyone is in some way committed to these ideas, right? We are committed to the idea that we're objectively free, and that we ought to be as free as possible in the context of a social and political space, right? We're objectively free, right? And that's something that is part of my existence. It's my existence. It's not something the government gives me. It's not something you guys give me. I'm objectively free. Freedom is an objective condition of my being. My freedom stands prior to and before the emergence of government, the creation of government. Okay, we're obsessed with that idea. We see it as objectively true. We see each other as objectively equal. Again, these are abstract ideas. Obviously, there's a lot of inequality and there's a lot of, but right? We see each other as uniquely individual. We see each other as possessing natural rights, right? Okay. And again, the really, I apologize for boring you with this, but the important thing to remember here is that this is who we are. This is us. And not only is it us, right? But these ideas are central to our paradigm, to our system of thought. And we tend to think of these ideas as objectively true in a metaphysical sense. Okay. Now, the second major part, now I would say as important as the philosophical part, right? This almost can't be exaggerated enough. But the second parallel, and in a way now intertwined, the second parallel kind of mode or area of the Enlightenment, okay, is what is called the emergence. The emergence of the normative the emergence of the normative, I would say, behavioral, social, and medical sciences. Now, by the way, we could also even add the physical sciences, right? We can just add the physical sciences too, right? So the second major component of the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought is the emergence, again, during the early 1600s, and still going right now. Pfizer announced the vaccine for COVID, and it's 90% successful in a second stage trial of over 30,000 people. Science, right? The medical sciences, okay? And so the second component of the Enlightenment is the emergence, the emergence, the happening, the discovery, the emergence of what we can now call the normative, behavioral, psychology, psychiatry, sociology in some ways, child development, the emergence of the normative behavioral sciences, the emergence of the normative social sciences. You guys are an example of this. You are political scientists. You are in a college. Our college is called the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. The political science department is in a college called the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. The emergence of the behavioral, social, the medical, and the physical sciences. Right? This, and again, this starts to develop in the early 1600s. And like the philosophical ideas we were talking about Tuesday and just a few minutes ago, the circulation of blood is discovered, what, in the 1680s or something, right? The science, Galileo discovers that the sun is the center of the universe. Kepler figures out that the universe is not circular like Aristotle thought, but it's elliptical. Right, that was Kepler, right? Natural sciences, sciences of the human body, the medical sciences, the circulation of the blood, right? That was discovered. The beginning of modern universities in Europe in the late 1600s, 1700s, right? From which CSUN is a quintessential example. The social sciences, the behavioral sciences, the emergence of psychiatry and psychoanalysis, right? This emergence of the normative, behavioral, social, medical, and physical sciences that occurs between the 1600s and still is, in fact, it's speeding up. We're still kind of in this obsession with the sciences. And if you had to reduce the slogan, if I was an ad agency and I had to reduce, if I had to come up with a slogan for the Enlightenment science, for the emergence of Enlightenment science and its various behavioral, social, medical, physical. If I was an ad agency and I had to come up with a slogan to describe the emergence of science and the Enlightenment, I would say something like this. What's the spirit? What is the spirit of the various modes of science in the Enlightenment? And it's this: everything and everybody can and should be examined. Everything and everybody can and should be examined. And from that process, that scientific process of examination, of observation and examination, we will collect data. And we will study that data to discover how things work. And if we discover how things work, we can fix things that are broken. That is the slogan of science understood very generally in the emergence of the Enlightenment, right? The spirit. What's the slogan of science? And again, it doesn't matter whether it's behavioral science, what's psychiatry. What's the slogan of social science? In our case, political science. What's the slogan for the medical sciences, for the health of the body? What's the slogan for the physical sciences? Not quite accurate application to that, but still there. What's the slogan? What's the slogan for Enlightenment science in its various modes? Everything and everybody can and should be observed and examined, right? Because what is the scientific method? Scientific method is observe, examine phenomena, natural phenomena, human phenomena, phenomena in the brain, right? The slogan for science as something that emerges in the Enlightenment is everything and everybody can and should be observed and examined. And then the second part is, well, why are we observing and examining everything? So we can collect data about things, about people, and about politics, and about mental development, and sexual normality, and the speed of light, and disease. We collect data. We do research. Well, why do we do that? So we can figure out how things work. How does the mind develop? How do people in complex societies function? Political science, sociology. How does disease develop, metastasize in the body? Medical science. Why are the ice caps melting? Physical science. Figure out how things work. Well, and again, work truthfully, right? What's the true optimum functioning of things, right? Well, why do we want to know that? Well, one, it's really fascinating to know that. And then two, it's really useful information when things break down. If the mind breaks down, we can fix it. If the political system breaks down, we can fix it. If the family unit breaks down, we've got sociologists. We go fucking fix it. Right? The Earth's heating up. Antarctica's melting. Well, why? Oh, too much fucking sunlight. Carbon dioxide fucked up the ozone. Okay, let's fix it. That is the obsession of the normative, behavioral, social, medical, and physical sciences. It's this idea. Everything can and should be observed and examined. Why? To acquire data, to acquire information, to acquire knowledge about what? How things work, how the mind works, how political systems work, how the body works, how the natural environment works. Why? One, so we acquire knowledge about the mind and the body and the environment and disease. And so we know, not only do we have that knowledge, but when things start to break, people have panic attacks or they have psychotic episodes. Or the democracy falls into civil war. Or the body is ravaged by disease. Or the environment starts to come apart. So we can fix it. And that's the slogan of science. Right? Everything can and should be examined and observed. We collect data to acquire knowledge about how things work, how things, as best we can, work truly, objectively. So one, we can know the truth about things, and equally as important, when those things break down, whether they're minds or bodies or political systems or family units or the environment, we can fix it. And we tend to see that, like the philosophical element of the Enlightenment, as objectively true. We tend to view the emergence of the normative, behavioral, social, medical, and physical sciences and the knowledges that they produce, the political science, the medical science, the physics, the quantum physics, the psychiatry, not Freud. Freud was a crack, but certainly Jung, and certainly now the cognitive psychiatrists up on floor 3. See, so all their experiments, figuring out how cognitive functions work, right? Why are we doing it? We're collecting knowledge, and we think of that knowledge as fairly true. It's fairly accurate. Obviously, there's big debates in science, and idiots like me go to conferences and they get in debates with other idiots from other universities, and the whole machine goes on, right? But we're all there thinking that we're observing and examining and acquiring data and learning about how things ought to work, ought to be. That's what we're doing, and we believe, and we're kind of committed to this idea that it's objectively true, and not that it's just objectively true, but that it's good for us, right? Okay, and you and I, and this is us. I mean, Tuesday we were talking about how this is an us moment because we conceive of ourselves as free, morally equal, unique, individually unique, and possessors of natural rights. Now you can just overlay this whole second part of the Enlightenment system of thought, this normative, behavioral, social, medical, and physical sciences, right? And now the thing gets really dense, right? And that's really us, because we're political scientists. You've been in the quintessential scientific Enlightenment institution called CSUN for 5 years now, acquiring all this knowledge. You're going to get a piece of paper that says political science, right? It's literally you. It's what you do for a living now in many ways. It's not just what you like to think about and what you read, right? And how you chat people up at hipster bars. This is what you're going to do for a living. You've chosen this to do for a living, right? I'm a political scientist, right? It's you. This is us. And without being snarky, of course I'm not being snarky, this is, we think that what we're doing is, you know, again, big debates. I'm teaching a class on postmodernism, so I'm sitting here telling you all the subjective truth stuff is bunk. Okay, so we have debates, to be sure, right? But we have those debates in an Enlightenment scientific context where we still think, yeah, Dungy can go on and on and on, but yeah, there's still some fucking truth. We'll smile and nod our heads to Dungy. We'll write the papers. He'll give us an A, and then we're gonna, you know, don't tell Dungy the truth really exists, right? Let him be okay, right? And we think it. We think that it's out there, and that what we're doing is in some way, sometimes more, sometimes less, to be sure, kind of connected to some objective truth. And that what we're doing is pressed into the project of some progressive social and political and health project. We're gonna make the place better, not worse. Better, always better. This enlightenment, this rational progress, enlightenment progress. The progressive project. All right. So the third, again, this one's the least important. I don't know, maybe not. Right now it's not, but it's the smaller of the three. So the third element of the of this Enlightenment project is what we could call the political element. So the Enlightenment is made up of these three big categories. You got the philosophical, you got the normative, social, behavioral, medical, and physical sciences, and you got the political part. And the political part, again, of the Enlightenment is the emergence of something like liberal democracy that emerges through the political philosophers of this 15th, 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, through Hobbes and through Locke and Adam Smith, the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution, who created a Bill of Rights to protect citizens against abuses of government, right? The whole political project of the Enlightenment. And the whole political project of the Enlightenment is in some way geared around something like liberal democracy. Now, again, to be sure, right? We can cut that up and we can debate about it. We got social democracy, right? There's a new club at CSUN, the Young Social Democrats, something, you know. So we can talk about this in lots of ways, to be sure, right? But the primary project, right, of the Enlightenment, the primary political project of the Enlightenment, is this very general idea that something like democratic rights, laws, and institutions, however you want to kind of nuance them and arrange them in subtle ways, in conservative ideology and left-winging ideology and socialist ideology, you can nuance it in all sorts of ways. But at the end of the day, there's still this general commitment, this idea that something like laws and institutions and processes that are democratic in spirit in some way are, and here's the important word, superior, are objectively superior to other forms of political arrangement, right? And this is important, right? And the key term here is that these type of legal, institutional, and procedural democratic things as ways of doing politics are objectively superior. Not just better because we like them, right? Not superior because they're ours, but objectively superior to other forms of political regimes, like fascism or authoritarianism, right? This is not so fashionable post-Cold War and multipolar worlds, and I get it, right? But we still tend to knee-jerk look at the North Korean regime. It's patriarchal, hierarchical, oppressive, authoritarian political system. And we tend to look, notwithstanding our many flaws, to be sure, our many flaws, and we say, well, but doing things like this tends to be objectively superior than doing things like that. And why do we say that, right? What's the evidence we now, right? I think Professor DeMaio would be so proud of me right now, right? What's the evidence, right, that we collect for this? We say, well, people, the citizens in those types of regimes seem to flourish. They seem to be healthier. They seem to be mentally healthier. They seem to be happier, right? They seem to be more creative and expressive of their private and unique visions and idiosyncrasies, right? People tend to flourish. And economies grow, and there's productivity, and there's innovation, and there's exchange, and there's competition. And all of that produces, again, this is a kind of idealistic portrayal, of course, right? And all of that kind of tends to elevate people, elevates the political processes of the institutions, right? And that's why we say when we go to war, right? And sometimes we say it sarcastically, sometimes we say it cynically, but sometimes we say it seriously. You know, when George W. Bush, he said it cynically, of course, but when George W. Bush said he's going to war in Iraq to bring freedom to these people, right? Because people are better with freedom than under terror and authoritarianism and fascism and paternalism. So in the Enlightenment, there's even this kind of political component. And which, again, I think if you guys could rush through the screen and stab me like Caesar, you would do so right now. At the point of irritating you with my stupid tropes, once again, this is us, right? Even in our own unique way. And I know this personally because I know many of you have been. You've been on the streets the last several months. You've been on the streets fighting for democracy, right? Democratic laws and democratic processes and democratic institutions are under threat. They're under threat by police brutality. They're under threat by racial injustice. They're under threat by the looming authoritarianism that's just right fucking over there. And what are you doing? At great risk to yourself, at great risk to your education, because you know you're protesting rather than studying. At great risk to your economic well-being, you're protesting rather than working, which is, by the way, I celebrate. Right? But at great risk to yourself, you're on the streets fighting for democratic institutions. However you may want to nuance it, I get that. And why? Why are you doing it? Because you're saying at some fucking core level, this is as bad as what we have, or as imperfect as what we have. It's fucking objectively better than the authoritarianism and the racism and the oppression and the misogyny you're gonna fucking offer. And why is it objectively better? You may not say those words, but this is what you're thinking. It's objectively better because I'm not going to thrive under these types of powers, under these types of legal and institutional processes, political processes. Right? My soul shrinks. I go back in the closet. If I'm gay, I go back in the fucking closet. I don't want to live in the fucking closet. Nobody thrives in closets. So this, again, this is us. Okay. This is us. So when we think about the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought, and we think about it across three kind of categories: a philosophical, this kind of normative scientific, various guises, and it's political. This is a kind of a fairly accurate description of the system of thought that has been in existence since about the early 1600s and is kind of wobbling to maintain its existence right now. It's still, we're actually in a transitional period right now, but that's for another class. Actually, that's for the consulting company. So this is us. And it's important that we understand us, right? Because it's us that Foucault is going to interrogate. Foucault is going to bring a Nietzschean, a postmodern, a nominalist critique to the Enlightenment, to us. Now, before I get to that, I want to add a little bit to the argument we are, and then we're going to turn to what Foucault is going to do. Now, this is a kind of a little segue, okay? But I want to put it here right now because I want us to see it here before we get to Foucault. One of the things, what Foucault does in the book, actually, how he goes about his analysis, okay? Ultimately what disciplinary power is. What Foucault does in the book is in this kind of very creative, kind of ingenious way, very creative, right? Creative way, sort of identifies. Foucault identifies three major techniques or strategies. Okay, let me repeat, write this down. And because one, it's kind of clumsy, but if you get your head around this moment, you're going to own Foucault. Okay, so what have we done so far? We've identified the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought along its three categories. Okay, now what Foucault does as he analyzes the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought is he looks at that, he identifies those three areas of the Enlightenment, and he identifies three critical and important, what he calls strategies and techniques. Three critical strategies and techniques that emerge from the Enlightenment. Okay, so emerging out of the philosophical component of the Enlightenment, emerging out of the normative scientific part of the Enlightenment, and maybe even in a way emerging out of the political side, but Foucault twists this a little bit. Are three strategies and techniques that are developed during the Enlightenment. And by the way, we see them everywhere, so they're going to be very familiar. Okay, now those three strategies and techniques, they are: one, the total control and routinization of space and time. The total control, and I've written them here on the outline for you, if you have the outline. The total control and routinization of time and space. Two, the emergence of architectural buildings, the way we build buildings, the way we design cities and build buildings. The emergence of architectural institutions, spaces, the emergence and the designing of architectural buildings and spaces that are designed to maximize the observation and surveillance of the people inside of them, and from this phenomena emerges the panopticon. From this emerges what we could right now call internalized psychological systems of self-observation. And by the way, this sounds a little clumsy, but trust me, you know this. And then third, the third strategy / technique, the creation and the deployment of a comprehensive and almost infinite system of examinations that name, define, classify, and objectify. So let's step back, because this is a critical moment. And if you see this and own this, you're going to own Foucault. Okay? So here we go. And if you've got a whiteboard at home, just whiteboard all this out, chart it all out. So the first major step we've made is we identified the Enlightenment as a metaphysical system of thought. And we identified the three major elements: the philosophical, the normative scientific, and the political. And we talked about various points inside there. And we have said all three of those elements of the Enlightenment are very familiar to us, right? We are free, equal, rights-bearing individual people who are also political scientists and who sometimes go to the psychiatrist because we're not feeling right mentally, or we go to the doctor when we've got a disease, right? And we love to live in something like liberal, democratic, political institutions and processes. All right, all that's familiar. And we tend to think that those things are kind of true in some way and good. All right, okay. Even if we'd never read Nietzsche or Foucault, that would be easy to see because it's us. All right, what's the next move? What does Foucault do? Foucault, and by the way, Foucault doesn't invent this. This is what comes out of the Enlightenment. Foucault says, all right, so what are three major strategies or techniques that have emerged from the Enlightenment? What are three major strategies and techniques that have emerged from the Enlightenment and that we can see operationalized everywhere in society? What's the first one? The total control and routinization of space and time, right? And this is just the kind of basic idea of getting a rational control over space, a rational control over time. Beginning in the Enlightenment, right? One of the byproducts of the Enlightenment, of its philosophical, scientific, political modalities, is this idea that we're in the Enlightenment, we get control of time and space, right? So like, think about the whole university as a kind of conscious, structured control of space. You got the footprint of CSUN. You got this massive thing, this controlled, delineated, controlled space called CSUN. It's massive. Covers this massive, massive grid space in the middle of the San Fernando Valley. All right, so you got this control of space. This is where the university is. Down the street is where the prison is. Down the street in Simi Valley is where the Army base is. Over there is where the medical center is. Over there are the elementary schools. Right down the street, there's a huge fucking factory that makes Budweiser, right? Identifying and delimiting space for specific purposes. Again, this is so obvious to us, it's almost impossible to believe that this was an invention of the Enlightenment. If you had been in London in the 1600s, or if you'd been in Paris in the early 1700s, it was a mess. Ghettos and slums and no organization, no delineated space, except for the castle. Right, and so emerging out of the Enlightenment is this obsession, this pathology with the total organization and routinization of space and time. And it's not just space, the fact that you got CSUN. And by the way, it's not just that you got this big space called the university, but inside this big space called the university, you got lots of little spaces called the College of Engineering and the College of the Social and Behavioral Sciences and the College of Television and Film and Wealthy People, right? You got little spaces. And then inside those little spaces, say the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, you've got even more spaces. You've got the anthropology department, and you've got the political science department, and you've got the sociology department, and you've got the history department, and you've got the psychiatry and psychology department. And now we have an urban development department. And inside even those departments, you got little mini spaces, like little cells, little box cells, where Professor Dungy used to have his office. Control, more space. And by the way, have you ever noticed that all these spaces and these large institutional centers look the same? CSUN looks exactly like a mid-level prison, penitentiary. Block, grid, cells, or offices, clear lines of sight, well illuminated. And the prison and CSUN looks like the hospital. Little wards for these types of sick people and these types of sick people. And the prisons and the universities and the hospitals all look like Facebook. If you go to Silicon Valley and you go to Facebook, you go to any of these big companies, they look like these bureaucratic places, floors with the CEOs, floors with the engineers, floors with the customer service, and on each floor, the cubicles, and everybody's in their damn cubicle. They all look the same. Because they were motivated by the same pathology that emerges out of the Enlightenment to get control of this space. And it's not, and it's not just space, it's time. It's time. The Enlightenment invents the clock. The Enlightenment invents the clock. It doesn't invent time. There's always been kind of time, right? People, the sun just rose. It's morning. It's morning time. I'm really hungry. It's lunchtime. Ah, the sun went down. It's nighttime. I need a drink. There's always been time. The Enlightenment didn't invent time, but it did invent the clock. It invented a way of organizing and routinizing time called the clock. 12 and the 1 and the seconds. There it is. It's on every wall. It's on every wrist. It's on every iPhone. It's on every schedule. The clock. The total organization and routinization of time. And the breaking down of time into ever smaller units to extract more efficiency, extract more productivity, to extract more studying, whatever it is. This is the Enlightenment. It's first strategy. You see it everywhere. And it's even in your head, your consciousness. I will even go so far as saying your consciousness. Think about your consciousness. It's organized. You got little organized spaces, little rooms in your mind. This is my political science room, and this is my psychotherapy room, and this is my work room, and this. You think about how we organize our mind into little blocks of spaces. And how we organize our life, just schedules every half hour, right? And by the way, as we say to ourselves all the time, the better we are at organizing our space and the better we are at organizing our time, the more self-disciplined we are. Disciplinary power. The more self-disciplined we are. And boy, that's a good thing. That's a virtue. Because you're not lazy. You're not wasting time. You're not in the wrong space when you should be somewhere else. You're actually self-disciplined. You're actually got virtue. You're actually going to be successful. So we valorize it. We normatize it. This obsession with organizing space and time, it's not just institutions. It's not just the clock. It's our lives. And the better we become at organizing the space-time of our lives inside our mind and in our days, the more self-disciplined we are, the more successful we will be, the more celebrated. Look at that. Look at that Ruth. Look how organized she is. Look how disciplined she is. Boy, look how much she fits into a day. Holy fuck, how does she do that? And she's still smiling. Oh, How successful? You're going to make a lot of money. So it's everywhere. And yes, CSUN did used to be a hospital. Actually, it used to be a military barrack. Actually, Cal State University Channel Islands used to be a mental institution. And I know that because I went there before it was CSU Channel Islands. I visited there before it was a CSU school. And had they hired me, I would have had the incredible honor of being both a patient in a mental institution and a professor at the university that the mental institution became. Now, how is that for fucking enlightenment sauce? That's some drip. All right, what time does this class end?
45.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's just a little bit about the first strategy.
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Second strategy. Second strategy. The emergence of buildings. The emergence, what I call architectural. The Enlightenment begins to build buildings, literally, to design as architectural designs. To begin to build buildings that maximize the observation of the people inside them. The second major strategy of the Enlightenment is the building of buildings, the design, the architectural design, the building of buildings that are built for the sole purpose, one of them, of maximizing the observation of the people in them. Now, as we get deeper into the book, that's Foucault. Let me just slide a little bit here. What Foucault is going to do in the book, and we're going to talk about this when we start reading chapter 1, what Foucault is going to do in the book is he's going to trace the emergence of the modern prison and the modern army in the Enlightenment. He's going to trace the emergence of the Enlightenment account of the prison and the Enlightenment account of the modern army. And he's going to use that as a metaphor to talk about how these strategies become the strategies that were designed for the modern prison and the modern army. We're kind of talking about them right now, how those strategies get applied everywhere in the society. That's why the book is written the way it is. So the second strategy, the designing and the building of buildings, hospitals, prisons, universities, elementary schools, corporations, Facebook, the designing and the building of buildings, not just to organize space, but also to maximize the observation of the people inside of them. Factories are built so the line boss can see exactly where every employee is supposed to be and at any minute to maximize the observation of the people in it. The cubicles at Facebook, the cubicles, many of you are going to go work in a cubicle. The cubicles, why are the cubicles 4.5 feet high? Why does your head just stick up? Why are they accessible everywhere? Because they're designed to maximize observation of you by the boss, by the manager, by the superior. Buildings and the space inside the buildings are designed to survey you, to observe you, to watch you. And now the trippy stuff happens. And why do they do that? Two reasons. One, the simple reason, to watch you, to know perfectly damn well if you're late to work, to know perfectly damn well if you come back to your factory job and you've had a few beers and you're fucking it up. The simple reason, to watch you. But the deeper, heavier, terrifying reason is to induce inside of you and me, to induce inside the people who are being watched, which is everyone, because you're watched in the hospital, you're watched in the elementary school, you're watched in the factory, you're watched in the university, now you're watched online all the effing time. Period. 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 Even when they tell you we've turned off the microphone on Alexa, or they've turned off the camera on Facebook. So what's the purpose? To induce in the minds, and not just induce in the minds, to create as a structure of mind. To induce in the mind, or even to create as a structure of mind, to induce in the minds of the people who are being watched the unending awareness that they're always being watched. And what's the purpose of that? To produce in those people the internalized, psychological, I can't find a better word, the internalized, the psychological awareness that I'm always being watched. And I internalize that and deepen that so much that I start to watch myself. And the more they can induce in me, or actually in a Foucaultian way, construct a consciousness that is constructed by the very mechanisms of watching itself and becoming aware of watching itself, I become disciplined. I don't need to be watched anymore. So power becomes functional even when it's not present. And then the third. And you know this because you're waiting for my midterm grades. You just got your 3 other midterms. Many of you have taken COVID tests, so you had your medical exams. Some of you just had to renew your driver's license. Some of you had a panic attack, and there's lots of people having panic attacks because everybody's mind's coming apart. And so you had a mental examination, you got a COVID examination. I got 30 of your midterms, and I'm going to examine them. The first day you're born, before your parents even give you a name. Your parents haven't even fucking named you. And a team of doctors and nurses have weighed you, they've drawn the blood, they've measured you, they've poked you, they put a little white thing in your eyes to make sure your pupils are going like this properly before you even have a name. You've undergone a battery of medical examinations to figure out if they have to take you from the birthing ward to the sick neonatal ward, to figure out where they're going to put you. And so the third strategy, the creation and deployment of a comprehensive and infinite system of examinations, right? And by the way, remember what feels like 100 years ago now, but it was just 20 minutes ago, when we were talking about the second part of the Enlightenment system, right? The normative scientific part of the Enlightenment. We said, what's the slogan of the scientific era? What's the slogan? Everything and everybody can and should be what?
Examined.
Examined. Why? So we can get data information about them. Why? So we can know why they work. How are they healthy? Are the pupils dilating? Is their mind developing properly? So we can take that one so we know how things ought to work. And so then when they don't work, we can fix them. And by the way, this, like I said, but before your parents have even named you, you've been examined. And in fact, the construction of your identity as a narrative, as a kind of a writing, begins even before you have a name. Because there's written documentation about your birth weight, about your blood tests, about your pupil dilations, about your gender. You don't even have a name yet. And you're already being constructed as a narrative, as a postmodern narrative. This is who this person is. This is what they weigh. This is their jaundiced skin. This is his heart defect. Whatever. And even when you're dead, Nick Dungy's gonna be dead. Nick Dungy is going to be dead. And he's gonna be on some cold steel table in some effing hospital. And a bunch of med students are gonna be cutting me up. I'm dead. And I'm still being what?
Watched.
I'm being examined. Yeah, I am being watched. Yeah, that's kind of creepy, whoever said that. You turn off the Netflix. I'm being examined. I'm fucking dead. And why are they examining me?
To understand why you died.
Why I died. Oh, I fucking drank too much whiskey. Look at that liver. Holy shit, look at those lungs. That guy went through a pack of marbles a day. Oh, this is why he died. He had a little blood clot and we didn't see it, or he had a weak heart and didn't see it, and then finally stroked out on him. Oh yeah, now we know why he died. Let's write that. That's the last part of his story. Now, if you had never met me and you had never read any Nietzsche nor any Foucault, never met me, never read Nietzsche, never read Foucault, all you did was listen to Jordan Peterson. Everything that we've just said in the last 2 lectures would be absolutely familiar to all of you and normal. This idea that there's a total control of space and time, fucking normal. It's called your schedule. Of course I go to CSUN. Of course the CSUN's a big space. Of course I go to the College of Social Behavior Sciences. And of course I go to the Political Science Department. Of course. And I've got this totally organized schedule time. I got the clock now. Everybody's got to watch. Yeah, I'm here. And the better I get out of that, the more self-disciplined I am, the more potentially successful, the more valued I am. Right? I make the dean's list. Bam. That's fucking cool. That's normal. We celebrate that. Of course we're walking around in buildings that people have been watching us. Of course. They're helping us mature. They're helping us grow up properly. Of course. And of course there's exams. This is science. We gotta, if the baby's sick, we gotta find out. Better find out early. Lots of exams. If the kid's kind of acting a little weird on the playground, take them to the psychiatrist. Oh, he's got ADHD or she's got ADHD. Oh, yeah, now we get it. Okay. Oh, let's jack it up with 1,000 fucking milligrams of Paxil. Let's fix it. It's all normal. And not just normal, it's kind of true. It's kind of true and we think it's good. So even if you never read any Nietzsche, you never read Foucault, everything we've said is absolutely familiar to you and normal. And not just familiar and normal, we valorize it. We think all this stuff is kind of true and good for us. And we're living out as our practices, its normative and moral expectations. Yeah. Now things get heavy on Tuesday when we now start to look at this from a Foucaultian point of view. So we're going to say a few more words about this, and then we start chapter 1 on Tuesday. Have a fabulous day, everybody.
Thank you, Dungy.
Yep, love you guys. Really, have a great weekend. Be good. Be good to yourselves. Be kind to yourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Dungy.
Yep. Love you guys.
Love
Thank you, Nick.